Welcome to On Cooldown, the show where we walk the walk and talk the talk every Friday at Marcelian&Flame. This week, Blizzard is going through some tough times after Blizzcon. Stocks drop, but will heads drop as well? Speculations on Blizzard folk being let go are on the rise. Season 2 and the new Azerite 5th ring will be available next year. What will we do over the holidays? And last but not least, World of Warcraft forums being changed, revamped. Will we keep the transmog posts going? Hello you beautiful bastards, I'm Flame from Marcelian&Flame bringing you the news on cooldown. If you like it, hit the like, if you want it, subscribe, and if you want to be the first to know when Arthas comes back as a redeemed hero, hit that notification bell thingy to let YouTube know that you want us in your phone, because mobile is the future, hashtag Blizzcon 2018. Heading off into the first topic of the day, the WoW forums have moved, which you probably knew already if you wanted to post your 2 cents on BFA as the best WoW expansion in the history. WoW's future is the future, and as accurately represented by the 2 most iconic WoW races, the High Mountain and the Void Elves, because nothing screams we want new players more than giving them bigger horns and edgier elves. I mean, we all know there has been a long-standing feud between the selected proud Tauren race living in a high mountain and the elves that embraced the void and followed Illyria across the universe fighting the Burning Legion, Naru fanatism and old gods maybe? But enough about religion, what else can we look forward to? Well, patch 8.1 is on the horizon, announced to be released early December, with a brand new story, well, a continuation of our current story, new raids, plural because Horde gets one and Alliance gets one, and without being too biased I hope, I think one side fights the cooler end boss. But we will discuss about killing more iconic Warcraft characters some other time. With 8.1, PvP Season 2 and the actual raids do not start in December, but in January, as was announced at Blizzcon as well. With this comes some clarifications from a blue post released earlier this week. As expected, new patch, new raid, better gear means our current mythic dungeon pool will have its loot boosted in eye level to remain relevant of course. Not only that, but seeing as we are getting a batch of brand new Azerite gear, it stands to reason that old, shitty Azerite gear won't be 100% useless, right? Well, it looks like things are moving into that direction. All the old Azerite gear will receive a 5th ring with traits, most likely containing some of the new traits coming next patch. But the ring will only be unlocked in Season 2. Now, since Season 2 releases a new set of gear with the new raid, it kind of makes sense to push the 5th tier to match the raid, but at the same time, people have expressed their disapproval of this despite Blizzard mentioning it at Blizzcon. Well, partly. They didn't clarify it at the time, but putting 2 and 2 together, it's not surprising. Yet putting into the game at patch release might make players feel they need to farm it during the holidays. Which brings us to the most important question coming December. What is worse? Because I always like to start my holidays with that question. What is worse? Farming the new gear while Santa is getting drunk with kids on his lap? Oh, sorry if I ruined Christmas. Or eating dinner with your family, asking you why aren't you married yet and planning on grandchildren. The Santa part, obviously, I'm not a monster, okay? I actually do enjoy Christmas. I don't like the 3rd degree on my personal life, but that's because I have no personal life. Now, let's talk about something a little bit more personal, and this is pretty much the aftermath of Blizzcon 2018. Now, we did cover it a little bit in a couple of our videos, but we mainly skimmed through it because we're still a WoW channel, and the biggest drama that happens, as we all know, is with Diablo. And, well, we don't really cover Diablo, although we love it. Marcel and I are big Blizzard fanboys. We bought and played pretty much all of their games, so it kind of affects us in certain ways that the situation is as it is now, and most of you probably already know. Now, I'm not sure if most people have been watching the scenes, if they've been watching what people posted online, like the red shirt guy 2.0, if you guys know him, the guy that asked if this is a joke.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
He actually made a very interesting video that put some things into perspective, and I felt like there were a lot of things that I wanted to say, but haven't said it so far. I felt a little bit not so sure if I should, you know, be that personal into a video, but hey, I mean, we're all people in the end. I want to be as personal as I can. This is why I'm doing this without a script, so I'm not sure how this goes, so here goes, right? So after BlizzCon, it's no surprise that the stocks dropped for Activision Blizzard a lot. It was a huge failure, a huge bomb when it comes to the stock market. Now, there's been a couple of interviews after it that weren't so Blizzard favorable, to say the least. And one thing that happened a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday actually, was on David Brevik's stream, or better yet, on his wife's stream. I think it's the Jungle Queen, the stream's called. Basically, David came home a little bit tipsy, but as we all know, usually the truth comes out when you're just a little bit hammered. So he was just reacting to the chat, and one question led to another, and the talk went to Blizzard employees and how they're actually being paid coming end of the year. Because they're paying less, they're paid less. I think it was publicly stated that their salaries are way smaller this time around. And as far as I was able to find out from the media sources and whoever actually covered this whole thing, usually Blizzard at the end of the year has like a bonus program where everybody just gets bigger wages, and I might have misunderstood this, but as I understood it, this kind of bonus came from Mike Morhaime. He was basically giving everybody higher salaries at the end of the year. Now, as we all know, Mike Morhaime is no longer with Blizzard, and apparently this bonus has been cut off altogether. Now, the point of this is David Brevik speculated, and of course this is speculation, it might not be true, it might just be him being a little bit tipsy, but like I mentioned, we're just taking information from where we can. So he's been speculating that this is something that Mike Morhaime would have argued against, because this is probably something that he was behind a lot of the time, and this might have been the reason why he was let go, although allegedly he left on his own accord. But of course this doesn't usually happen with big companies such as Blizzard. You don't just go off of your own accord. Now, I personally don't think this is a good enough reason for a person to just leave or be let go of just because of this. I'm not sure how big that bonus is, that it was such a big deal. I actually think this might be like the last drop in a big glass of shit that Mike Morhaime might have endured in the last couple of years. And the reason I'm saying that is because Blizzard changed over the years, and that's natural. Things change, that's how life is. The gaming industry changes altogether. Now, Morhaime left, and Metzen left as well a couple of years ago, and these kind of things, these events kind of turned a little light bulb in my head. Is like, what's going on? Because although this is a little bit personal, what this means is whenever I thought of Blizzard, two faces came into my mind. Whenever I thought like Blizzard as a person, as people, the first one was always Metzen, because, well, we can argue all day long, but he was a heart and soul man. Whenever BlizzCon came, he would, you know, encourage the crowd, empower the crowd. He was like a big superstar, right, at Blizzard. Plus, he was a superstar all around. Now, he did leave, right? And then Morhaime left as well, which for me, that was the second Blizzard face that I always thought about. So I was like, huh, both of these guys left. Now, what is Blizzard actually, right? And it kind of put things a little bit into perspective. Now, to understand what I'm about to say, I'm just going to go in a little bit of a history here with me personally. The first Blizzard game that I ever played was Warcraft 2. And if you remember from the Warcraft 2 menu, when you select all of those options and things, there's like this really cool background, kind of like drawn on a scroll on a piece of old paper. There's this troll that is fighting an elf, right? Really cool art style, very gritty, very brutal, very savage-like. Not reminiscent to what we have today, not the cartoonish, lighthearted World of Warcraft that we have today, but it was a little bit more brutal, more savage. And I was always wondering back then when I was a kid, when I was watching, I was like, who is this Metzen guy that signed himself on that artwork that's being used as the desktop, as the game's background, right? So I always wonder, man, this Metzen guy, obviously he made the art, so that's really cool. And that kind of art made me think of kind of like, if I were to put this into music, it kind of made me feel like it's rock or metal or something like that. And whenever I played the games, this was also apparent in the games as well, in the story and the gameplay and how it all worked. It kind of felt like all of the Blizzard game developers were a bunch of nerds that were into rock and metal, and they were just putting this huge passion into the game. And if you haven't noticed as well, I am also a little bit into rock and metal. If you've been watching any of my videos, most of the music that I'm putting in the background is pretty much rock and metal and forms of it. Now, so that's the kind of feel that I grew up. That's the kind of Blizzard that I knew and I came to love, right? This kind of like savage, brutal, but also heartwarming, really cool stories, really cool characters that you come to care about, right? This kind of feel. And over the years, of course, this subsided a little bit. I mean, this was kind of like the 90s and early 2000 theme from some of the games, if not the majority of them. So it's fair enough to assume that it won't actually go on until the late 20s and going forward into the game. So that was natural. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. But overall, the games kind of went to a more lighthearted route. I mean, if you take a look at Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, Diablo 2 was a little bit more dark. It was a little bit more gory, gruesome. And for WoW, for instance, right, without taking vanilla into consideration, because vanilla was kind of like a testing phase to see how they could do with an MMO. So you could argue that WoW actually started in the Burning Crusade. That's when the actual raiding progression system was done properly, when everything was a little bit more balanced. You didn't have hordes with shamans and alliance with paladins. You have a lot more balance in it, right? So what was the Burning Crusade, right? It was an expansion that put us into a very inhospitable world. It was an alien world. We had to fight for our survival and stop Illidan, the big boss, big bad guy, from getting more demons and threatening Azeroth, right? We felt like we had to do that. Then came Wrath of the Lich King, where we had to fight another iconic villain, which was Arthas, again in a very inhospitable land, Northrend, fighting a very real threat and danger to Azeroth, and we felt very powerless, but we banded together and we kind of did it, right? That kind of feel, that kind of gameplay started to dwindle a little bit over the years. Of course, we had Cataclysm, and we all know how that worked out for Blizzard numbers. I think Cataclysm was, or maybe the end of Wrath, but close to Cataclysm's release anyway, was the first time that Blizzard, like WoW, started having big drops in numbers, in sub-numbers over the years. And of course, it only went worse with Mist of Pandaria. And although personally, I kind of like the Mist theme, the Asian theme, the Chinese monks, Shaolin monks kind of theme that it had going on, I personally enjoyed that. It didn't really feel Warcraft-ish. It didn't feel it like Warcraft-ish, right? So that kind of feel went a little bit more lighthearted, especially with Mist of Pandaria. And then of course we had Metzen's announcement at Blizzcon for Warlords of Draenor. Now, that was a big hit for me. I was a big Warcraft 2 fan, and of course we know that the main characters in Worlds of Draenor were war chiefs and warlords from Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2, so that was a huge trip back in time for me. That I wasn't really behind the time travel part, but the fact that I was about to experience all of these cool characters that helped me actually fall in love with Blizzard to begin with, that was really exciting for me. And of course we know how the execution of the expansion went out, and how that came about is another story for another time. But of course after that Metzen left. Now allegedly he left because he had health issues, and he did have health issues, and I'm really personally glad that he so far seems to have managed to fix most of them, if not all of them. We've seen pictures. I mean, if you haven't, there are pictures of Metzen in let's say bad shape, but he's doing all right now. Seems like he's doing better, which is great, but I don't think, I'm not sure if having health issues is enough of a reason to leave a company you helped build for 2 decades, right? I mean, I could understand taking a break and going back in, but the fact that he left clearly means that there's more to it than that. There's more to that. There are speculations and, you know, ideas and opinions that Metzen's view, Metzen's direction for the game didn't actually align with how the players wanted the game, and that's why we had bombs like Worlds of Draenor and Mist of Pandaria, although Mist of Pandaria wasn't that bad. So that's probably why Metzen so allegedly left because, well, his vision for the game wasn't what was needed at the time. But what I thought at the time, without all of that speculation, without all of that insight, is I thought, well, yeah, the game kind of isn't like Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3 anymore. It's kind of like a little bit more hard, a little lighthearted, kind of like a little Disney, if I had to put it in one word, right? That's how the game felt. So Metin always embodied that rock theme, that metal theme, that savage theme that I thought Warcraft had envisioned, but not anymore, right? So, okay, kind of makes sense that Metin is leaving, but, you know, game goes on. That, obviously, a big Blizzard face leaving doesn't mean that the Blizzard company itself is dying, or it's not going to be the Blizzard that we fell in love with, right? No, of course not. But then again, of course, fast forward a few years later, now Morheim leaves as well. Now, the reasons why he left are not very clear, of course. It's all public, and everything that goes public is usually not really what actually happened. And as David pointed out, it might have been something that he just didn't like anymore, or maybe he was forced out to leave. But it falls down to one main idea that affects me personally, is that two of the main faces that I associated with Blizzard, and the ones that basically meant Blizzard for me, have currently left the company. Now again, the soul, the feel, the life of the company and the games that they made isn't in the 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals that made it and left. The soul can be passed on, the fight, the spirit of the game can be passed on, so it could live on into the developers, so that's why I didn't really want to think too much about it. But then again, Blizzard were still the company that was delivering high quality games, a company that cancelled games such as StarCraft Ghost and Project Titan because they deemed it under their normal standards, below their normal standards of quality. They didn't think the games properly represented who Blizzard was and what they wanted to represent on the market. Fair enough, right? That means that their standards of properly delivering games, new games, good games, franchise-defining games still remained, even if people were leaving the company. So that's what Blizzard basically is for me, and probably for most of the players out there. Blizzard is a company that releases a new game, whenever they release a new game. It's fresh, it's new, it's an amazing upgrade from the previous ones. Take a look at Warcraft 2 and then take a look at Warcraft 3, StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. There's a big upgrade in graphics, a big upgrade in quality overall when it comes to art, to gameplay. Of course, we can argue Diablo 3, but you cannot deny that there's definitely more effort put into it to release a newer, better game, right? So that's how they were so far. Now, fast forward to BlizzCon 2018. An event, a community event made by the community, who is composed of PC gamers almost entirely. We have a console Diablo 3 player here and there, but I doubt die-hard Diablo 3 fans that only play on the console come to BlizzCon. So it's fairly safe to assume that the majority, if not all of the fans at BlizzCon were mostly PC gamers. They might play the Blizzard games on other platforms because they're available, but PC gamers nonetheless. And you go to the opening ceremony and you see the Diablo Immortal announcement, a mobile exclusive game. It's not Diablo 3 on mobile, it's the new Diablo game on mobile. We are not mobile gamers. We might play a game here and there, but that doesn't mean that we are mobile gamers, which is what the problem was, what created this entire scandal, right? Because basically the game was advertised for gamers that weren't attending BlizzCon. It was not for the gamers that attended BlizzCon. So why would people fly thousands of miles, maybe some of them from Europe, some of them from other parts of the world, fly all the way to BlizzCon to see a game that they won't play, that they cannot play, that they probably won't want to play? And that was like the big announcement of the BlizzCon. And not only that, okay, let's say that was a fuck up on their part. They announced the game that they shouldn't have announced, or at least they shouldn't have announced that as the only and big game of the year, of the BlizzCon at least. But for the first time in I don't know how many years of playing Blizzard, it was the first time I watched a Blizzard cinematic showing a logo that was not Blizzard, and that is NetEase. It was the first time, as far as I know, that I've seen another logo besides Blizzard in a Blizzard so-called allegedly developed game, because they've said that it's not a carbon copy of NetEase ARPGs. It's something that they developed on their own, yet they're using their logo. So they're using NetEase as so much that they actually need to put their logo into the game, right? When did Blizzard become this company? When did Blizzard become a company that relied on other game developers to make their games, on other game developers to get insight onto the market and how to make their games appeal? When did that happen? And more than this, since when did Blizzard announce a new game for one of their IPs that is arguably a downgrade in quality? We can argue it's one of the best looking games on a mobile device, but catering to a community that plays Diablo 3 mainly on PC, you're releasing a new game for them that's on a different platform. It's a downgrade in quality and essentially pretty much looks like a Diablo 3 Lite. Let's be honest here. It looks like a Diablo 3 Lite. That was my initial impression. Of course, if you take your time to analyze the graphics and everything, it's probably not. The port is different, the animations might be a little bit different, but it looks like Diablo 3. It's not the new Diablo game, the new bee's knees, the new game in the franchise. It's a Diablo 3 Lite. So, from a company that cancelled StarCraft Ghost, cancelled Project Titan because they weren't meeting their standards, now they're releasing a game in conjunction with another company and arguably at a less quality than they're used to. So not only did they sacrifice the quality of the game, not only did they sacrifice their principles and they're working with other people, not only did they sacrifice the community, because let's be honest, who in their right mind, I'm trying not to be too personal right now, right? But a company as big as Blizzard knew that this won't be received as positively as they hoped, which is why they've prepared so many scripted comments, multiple Diablo projects. You hear that every time, you hear that in every interview that they do, multiple Diablo projects. They've rehearsed that is their go-to phrase for the entire event, because they knew we weren't going to receive that positively. Now, I'm not sure if they expected it to be received so negatively as it was. Clearly, they probably weren't expecting it, as judging from their reaction. They weren't prepared to face all of this. So, this is what it looks for me. Blizzard has sacrificed their standards when it comes to quality, has sacrificed their standards when it comes to game design in general. Like, they've sacrificed their quality when it comes to standards. They're using other companies to help build their game. They cannot build their games on their own. What is that? What does that tell you? What does that tell me, Blizzard? You're not able to build the so-called big new game of this year on your own. And we can even go into arguments as to how much of this game development have you actually done yourself. Why did you have to put NetEase there? Are you using their engine? That means you didn't create the engine. Are you using their animation engines? That means you didn't create that. You didn't. And lastly, Blizzard has pretty much at this point sacrificed their community for this game, which is clearly aimed to reach more players and get more money. I mean, this game doesn't scream like all the other games, oh my god, play me now, buy me on release. This is a game for you. This game screams, how can we get Blizzard on as many devices and to as many people as possible? This is what the game looks like. This is what the game looks like. It might be a very well mobile game, but the Blizzard that made the game, so allegedly made Diablo Immortal, is not the Blizzard that we grew up with, clearly. Is not the Blizzard that made the games that made us fall in love with Blizzard. It's changing. And of course the stocks show this, reflect this. However Blizzard turns into the future, I'm not sure where this is going. Like, they've cancelled StarCraft Ghost. That was a game that, as far as I can remember it, people were excited about it. It looked pretty cool. We didn't get a full experience as to how it performs. I think there were certain demos released, but they've cancelled it, right? But now they seem to be going with releasing a game that has 97% dislike ratio in the community. I mean, if you look at the YouTube videos, it has over 90% dislike ratio. So it's safe to assume that 90% of the community at the very least isn't happy with the game and doesn't want the game, but they're releasing it anyway. A company that canceled one of the major titles that they've had planned, Project Titan, they've canceled that because it wasn't as good as they hoped, but they're releasing this game despite the reception. What does that tell you about Blizzard? What does that tell me about Blizzard? I honestly don't want to know, because all arrows point into a bad direction. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that Blizzard will die. They're still coming back from this. It's up to them. The ball is in their court, like I said before. But the community, myself, and pretty much every Blizzard fan at this point, at the very least the majority of them, need some very, very hard convincing to get back from this. I don't think Blizzard will die. I don't think Blizzard will cease to exist in the gaming community. I just think Blizzard will slowly turn from a company that we were proud to be a fan of to a company that will just make games, and maybe we'll buy them, maybe we won't. It seems like Blizzard will just turn into another face in the gaming market, and that's just sad coming from a company that developed their own con, the Blizzcon. They've made that. We've made that together. And that's probably gonna go away. Well, this is my 2 cents in it, guys. It was a little bit of a rant. I didn't really plan on doing this. I've been watching the scene and the aftermath of BlizzCon for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks now. It's maybe 2 weeks right now. Been watching people covering it left and right, and I was like, oh, everything is looking not so good. And it kind of all started piling up, and I was like, okay, I feel like I want to say something. It's a little bit selfish of me. I understand it's a little bit personal. I get that. I don't expect a lot of people to agree, but this is my personal opinion. This is coming from a Blizzard fan, a fan of, like, what is it now? 18 years for me, at the very least. I've been a Blizzard fan for at least 18 years. And this doesn't seem like it's going to continue in the future. I always thought Blizzard as the benchmark for good games, for the best games in the industry. Now, Blizzard is just going to be another game developer that releases maybe a good game. They will probably continue releasing good games, but they won't release great games anymore, and that's sad. Looking back, that's sad. And hindsight is 2020. It kind of explains why Metzen left. It kind of explains why Morhaime left. If these were elements relevant in the company or present in the company at the time that these two people left, I can see why. You can argue the health issues, you can argue the time issues and all of that, but these two factors are so big that you can barely ignore them. Come into our Discord channel, let's have a chat, join in the comments, tell me what you guys think. Once again, this is my impression, this is my deduction of what's going on. This is not official, none of this is official, this is just personal impression, personal judgment. So I'm actually curious as to what you guys think, so let me know in the comment section below. And thanks again for watching on Cooldown, episode 24. We've come a long way, and I hope you guys like the kind of content that we're putting out every Friday. If you do, let us know. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one, next week, every day. Tune in, Marcelian Online. Peace out.